Alright, welcome to another Hickory Hack. Today we're resetting the club head on a hickory shafted golf club. That involves prepping the shaft for the club head, cutting a new pin out of brass rod, and a couple other things that I'll show you how to do in order to get your club back into action. So first I'm going to show you how to fit a new shaft to a club head. I like using a 4-in-1 file for this job, and you also want your wooden mallet to knock the club head off. This photo shows the grain of the shaft perpendicular to the club head at address, which is the proper way to have the shaft installed. You want to make note of the club head orientation on the shaft when you take it off. I've done that by putting a piece of masking tape on the back of the shaft so I know how to put the head back on. So in this example I have a shaft cone that's a little too big for the club head, and I'm basically taking my time and shaving just a little bit off as I go until the head fits. And you can see there's still a pretty large gap there, so I've got a ways to go yet. The key to this is taking your time and not taking off too much material too quickly. So the file allows you to go all the way around and take a small amount of material off, and it may take several repetitions. This took me 5 cycles until I got the cone just right to where the club head had a nice snug fit on the cone. So now that your shaft is ready for the club head, it's time to reset with epoxy. I like Gorilla Glue, works pretty well for me, and I'll be using this 3-sided file as well. What I'm doing with the 4-in-1 file here is taking the rasp and roughing up the cone so that it bonds to the epoxy better. I'll just go around the cone once like that, and then I'll take the 3-sided file and make sure that the inside of the club head is free of any residue, rust, or anything else that might prevent a good bond with the epoxy. So I mentioned I like using Gorilla Glue. This is 3300 psi, so it's pretty strong. Some guys prefer using the professional club makers epoxy or marine grade epoxy, but this has worked really well for me. So after mixing for about 20 seconds, you'll notice it's a little warmer, and it'll also smell because it's combining. And you'll have about 5 minutes to put this on before it really starts to set. I slather it in a thin layer all the way around the cone, and then I'll take some of it on a toothpick and put it on the inside, just a real thin layer on the inside of the club head. I'm pointing to a pencil mark on the cone, which is another indicator to myself as to how I want to have the head back on. And I'll slowly put the head onto the shaft. I'll tap it on the ground a couple times, and then I'll stand it up club head high for about 24 hours to let it set. Now we'll move on to crafting and setting a new pin. For this, I like to pick up 1/8 inch brown brass rod from Home Depot, and I'll use a hacksaw to cut this 36-inch length into 1-inch increments. Then I'll file the end of one of the 1-inch increments into a point, which is going to make this much easier to hammer into the hosel. In this example, I've fit a new shaft onto this club head, but that means that I need to drill a new hole in the cone for the hosel pin. So I'm using a 1/8 inch drill bit, and I'm very carefully starting on one side of the club head, drilling through the shaft, and then I'll go to the other side after I've gone about halfway through just to finish out the hole, trying not to nick the club head with the drill bit. And you can see here I have a nice clean hole now to put a new pin in. So I'll take the pin point side down, I'll place that into the hole, and you see how the shape of the point makes that sit real nice so you can hammer it in. And I'll hammer that in almost all the way, but I'll leave a little bit out on the short side so that I have something to work with, and then I'll cut the long side with the hacksaw. But I'm not going to cut all the way through this. I'm just going to get to the very end before it goes all the way through, and then break it off by hand so I don't nick the club head with the hacksaw. So now I've got a little bit of the pin on each side to mushroom and file. I'll use an anvil and then the rounded part on the ball peen hammer to slowly flatten this out on both sides of the hosel, and then make sure that there aren't any sharp edges by using the hand file. And I just take my time working my way on both sides of the pin until I'm satisfied that it's flush and isn't going to catch anything. And all I have to do now is wrap on a new grip, which I'll show you how to do in the next Hickory Hack. That wraps up this one though. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe.